Hi everyone. So yeah, sorry about that. Poor connection there. So hopefully Gil is going to jump back on. We're just going live there with my friend Gil Antolin, who's the founder of Luxury World Traveller. But sadly, here he goes. Gil, let's try again, my friend. I'm not sure if you're on Wi-Fi or not. Sometimes it's worth turning Wi-Fi off, which I've done. So let's try again. Thanks everyone for coming. Technology, guys. Yeah, just bear with us for a moment.
Yeah,
Gil, you're back.
yeah.
You're
I,
back.
I'm on Wi-Fi. I don't know what happened, so I have no
Yeah,
idea
no,
why it cut.
to be fair, what I do, I actually turn my Wi-Fi off when I do lives now because I don't know, it's technology, right? Like we can't control technology. So
Yeah,
yeah, so Gil, you was just saying then really about being at your mother's place.
yeah. That was the first major hurdle that I
Yeah,
faced. Parents got divorced. I had to leave college, leave my scholarship, move home, get a job, and really kind of like assume the role of being the man in the house, which was, it was a big undertaking, especially at that young age. You work really hard for something, and then you're forced to kind of like give it up. But family first. So, and then shortly after that, I my girlfriend got pregnant while I was still in college. So I'm last year of my college. So I went from my family, my mom and sisters, or my mom and dad getting divorced, and then about a year later, after I got back and got everything stable, my girlfriend got pregnant, and it was unexpected. Best blessing of my life now, but trying to become a dad at 22, 23 is a huge task. But it was a role that I assumed just because I came from a big family, and I'm Latin heritage, so Mexican, I'm half Mexican, and I'm one of seven children. My dad was one of nine, so we have a huge family. So I just assumed the responsibility, and then had to work a full-time job and go to school full-time. I did that for about a year and a half. So that was another really tough part of my life. Yeah. Yeah.
so Gil, you mentioned there about say having was that your son that you had there
That was my
at the age
son.
of yeah, okay. So
And
I know from your story, like we're going to move on to this in a bit, but you said there, you mentioned there, say your son was a blessing in disguise, and I personally believe, from what I've heard, your story, you wouldn't really be where you are today if it wasn't for your son introducing you to Instagram. So,
it's funny
um,
how life works. That's
I know
true.
it's
That's
crazy, right?
true.
So, let's move on to say your career, Gil. Like, because I know, um, you got affected by say the 2008 financial crash. From I remember hearing you say that before.
Yeah, I did. It was a huge. I was really heavily invested in real estate in Southern California. I had my own real estate and mortgage company, and yeah, I mean the entire world, right, was impacted by it. But I was heavily invested in real estate and mortgage, and I quickly went from having what I thought was like a dream life. So I was making a lot of money at a young age, and had the house and the car and the girl and the toys and the life, and was living way beyond my means and not really fiscally responsible. If you don't come, like, if you were raised in a household where like you're not wealthy or you're not rich or there's not an abundance of income, um, then there's no one to teach you fiscal responsibility, right? And it's not really something they teach in high school, or even college. Like, I think they don't really teach you how to manage that. So when you come into a lot of money, it's very easy to not be responsible with it. And that's kind of what happened with me. And then when the crisis happened, I basically lost everything and had to go back to ground zero. And that was like probably the toughest part of my life. Was right at the end of my 20s or early 30s, is like being able to be what they call financially successful, getting to a level where you think, you always dreamed of, owning your own home, having the cars, at a big office, corner office, and a glass building, and then one day the rug gets pulled and you find yourself like back to zero, and then having everything stripped away from you. And broke up with my fiance, lost my house. I had houses because I was buying and selling foreclosure, so I lost houses, lost cars, lost everything, and that was probably like the toughest part of my life right then, is when I lost everything. But luckily I had a spiritual advisor that kind of like walked me through the process, And he was the one that ended up taking me on a mission trip to Africa in the midst of my whole world, you know, crumbling. And that's really where I, you know, was able to shift my personal paradigm in the way I saw the world. Because I honestly believe, I don't know what you believe, but I think like after someone's in their mid 20s, you know, the way they see the world is a product of how they were raised and their friends and the family and, you know, whatever political system or country they grow up in, their educational system, all these different things impact you and how you see the world. And after your mid 20s, it's really hard for something to, you know, it's very difficult to then like all of a sudden shift and see the world in a new way. Does that make sense? And for me, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, and we're going to move on to this in a bit because that's one of my questions actually. We'll move on to this sooner, but like you mentioned there about the childhood programming, like it's taken years and years and years to be, say, formed or shaped into the person who we are today. So if we think like we're going to unprogram ourselves in like a matter of minutes or even a year, it doesn't happen that way. So we're going to move on to that. But yeah, Gil, let's carry on there because you said about you had the cars, you had the wealth, you had the house, etc., and the
Yeah.
rug got literally pulled from underneath your feet, like unexpected. So in that moment in time, how did you say keep, or did you keep a positive mindset?
It was difficult.
Mm.
It was extremely difficult. Like I said, I have a spiritual advisor that I leaned on heavily, someone that helped me see things in perspective because he had been through a similar situation. So it was great to have someone that actually, he went through it in the late 80s. The same thing happened in the US, almost exactly. You know, there was a real estate crash, real estate bubble. So he really helped me, you know, stay grounded and gave me a lot of really good advice because, you know, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself. It's easy to throw your hands in the air. It's easy to ask why me and really allow yourself to sink into that hole. But he told me something that I didn't believe at the time for myself. But later I learned that it was true. And he said, you know, you keep saying this is the worst time of your life, but actually, you know, it's going to end up being the best time of your life. And I didn't understand it at the time, right? Because I think we really, as humans, we only look to like the next day and the next day and the next day. We never are able to see long term what's going to happen or what our path was. And the truth is that although I made a lot of money in real estate and finance, and I achieved what I thought was like the dream, I was very unhappy because I didn't like doing it. And in that business, in order for me to make more money, I had to give people a worse deal, right? So it's hard to go to bed at night with that karma hanging over you. And I wasn't passionate about it. It wasn't something that I loved. And so even though I had everything pulled away, it was like the toughest 2 years of my life. It was just the universe and life preparing me for what was to come, you know? And so in that situation, I just had to focus on the fact that, yeah, maybe this wasn't where I was supposed to be and that everything happens for a reason. And I have to have, you know, hope and faith that in the long term, there's a different path.
I mean, you mentioned there, Gil, at the end there, hope and faith. And I feel like they're so important. Like hope for me stands for have only positive expectations, and
Mm.
faith stands for find answers in the heart. But yeah, like you mentioned there, that although it was a really painful experience that you went through then, so having literally everything torn from underneath you, it was also, again, like a blessing in disguise because you wasn't really happy doing what you was doing in that job as well.
At
And
all.
I say, like, sometimes your most profound periods of pain can also turn out to be your greatest gifts of growth. So in the moment, I'm sure many of us that say are here listening or watching, when you're actually in the middle of that adversity, it almost looks like there's no way out and your life is never going to be the same again. But then quite often, if you have a growth mindset and then a short period of time down the line, it could be 6 months, a year, 2, 5 years down the line, you look back on those events and you think, oh my God, that was the best possible thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah.
and you see how much you've learned from that, say, painful experience. Because I believe the greatest of life lessons are, say, at the center of our most painful experiences. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gil, moving on then to some of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
I noticed you said there about your friend there giving you some advice as well. So, what would you say then has been the best piece of advice you have ever received, and why?
Yeah. Um, I think the best piece of advice that I've ever received is really to follow your bliss and follow what you're passionate about doing. You know, I was raised in a house where I was told, and then it's no fault to my parents at all, but I was raised in a house where I was told, go to school, graduate, go to college, go work for someone, no matter what it is, just get a job, work as long as you can, save as much so that like, when you're in your 60s and 70s, you have a house and you don't have to worry. And like, I understand the point of view where they were coming from, but like I said, when I was doing real estate mortgage, I made a lot of money, but I was truly unhappy. And anytime in that industry, the results that I had, the money that I made, and the opportunities that came to me were only a direct result of how hard I worked. But when that all went away and I fell into, what I do now with Luxury Will Travel and the Instagram account, it was a direct result of following my bliss, and in 2012, actually 2013, when I told people I was going to leave what I had been doing for 15 years, which is real estate and finance, which I got my degree in, and like my entire life was based around this. And I was going to pursue a career in the travel industry based on an Instagram page. Again, 2013. Instagram was nothing.
Gil, let me interrupt quick. Just
Yeah, yeah.
tell us how you found out about Instagram, because I know it, but let's tell the listeners
Yeah,
how you
I
found
mean,
out.
again, it comes back to, my son. He's now 21. He turned 21 yesterday, which is just incredible. I mean, it's crazy to me. But at the time, he was like 12. And we were at my sister's house at Christmas, and him and my nephews, they're all about the same age. They were on the couch and they were on their phone, and like they were giggling and looking back and forth at each other. And I walk in, I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" Oh, we're on Instagram. I said, well, "What is that?" And like true as day, it's photos and filters, and you share with your friends. And I said, "Okay, well, you just share pictures with your friends?" "Yeah, it's social media." I said, "Oh, okay, so." It sounds like Facebook, right? And my son, I'll never forget this, ever. He looked straight up at me from the couch, like, rolling his eyes like a teenager would. And like, "Dad, Facebook's for old people." And I was like, "What?" I grabbed the phone and, I grabbed this phone. I looked at Instagram, and back then, in 2013, Instagram had 9 photos that were popular page. Like if you made popular page, the whole world saw it for 2.5 hours. Crazy to think now. And one of the pictures was of a travel page, and it was Maldives, and I was hooked because I'm a travel nut. So that's how I learned about Instagram. And I started my page around my bliss, which is travel, like my passion, right? And again, like getting back to the story, what I was saying is that like when I did real estate finance and mortgage, the only things that happened to me business-wise were a direct result of the effort that I put in. Does that make sense? So if I worked 18 hours, I made more money. And then if I went to more meetings and I did this, then my results and how much money I made was a result of how much I put in. Whereas with the Instagram page, when I followed my bliss and I followed, my heart and passion into travel, the universe really opened up so many opportunities I had nothing to do with. And then, the ability to, now I've traveled to 70 plus countries and stayed at the hundreds of the world's top hotels and resorts and been able to do what people like see and they're like, wow. But none of that was like a direct result of hard work. Yes, I've worked hard, but I think if you follow what you really are passionate about and everybody has something, right? Everybody, and that's why we're all unique. If you do that, you'll be very surprised how doors will open for you that you're not opening for yourself.
Oh, amazing. And such an inspiration. Like that story is so inspiring, Gil. So yeah, back to that question then, that first question I asked you. What would you say then was or is your one best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Yeah. So just follow and like for professionally, I know it sounds hard and you may not be able to do it full time out of the gate. And I know everyone's in their different situation, but we all have a passion for something. And I think the faster you incorporate your passion with what your job is, then the more blissful your life will be. Because it doesn't matter how positive you are, how many books you read, like The Secret and this and that and that. If you are forced to do a job you hate every day for 30 or 40 years, you're never going to really truly find bliss in life, because half of your life, if not more, is going to be spent doing something you don't love, you know? And now every day I do what I love and what I'm passionate about. And then it doesn't feel like a job, you know, it really feels like a career. And instead of staring at the clock all day, waiting for the day to end, every day I found myself not having enough time to do what I want. And I think that's the difference. And so even if you have to start small, I tell people you'll be amazed once you put your heart and soul into it and just, you know, give it your all, even if you have to do it part-time, what can happen, you know? And I am a perfect example of that. You know, Instagram became my online vision board. That's really what happened, you know? And I manifested things that seemed crazy in 2008, but yeah. So I would say to follow your bliss, follow your passion, do what you love, even if you have to start small.
Yeah, I really love that, Gil. And what really stood out to me then, what you mentioned there, was at one point in your life you couldn't wait for your day to end.
Yeah.
But then
Stare at the clock.
when you were, say, following your purpose, your passion, something that gave you meaning, you couldn't wait for your day to start. And there's a big difference. Like, so many people will say work in these jobs and they're saying, I can't wait for the end of the day. I can't wait till Friday. I can't wait for the weekend. I can't wait till the end of the year. And they're almost wishing their life away. But then I believe, like, when you go after something that really brings you meaning and a sense of giving as well, you literally can't wait to wake up in the morning to follow this mission, this path that you're on. So on the flip side of that, Gil, that question there, what would you say then has been your one worst piece of advice and acted on, and what was the result?
That's a tough question for me. That's a tough question, but I think maybe just being told that like there's one way to success, right? Which is just the traditional, and you know, you're in England, I'm from the United States. I mean, that's what you're taught as a kid, is that like there's one way to success. You know, the chances of you really, you know, you're taught this as a young age, the chances of you really becoming a pro athlete or a singer or an actor or a celebrity is so slim. So just, you know, like be safe, get a job, and then, you know, like just save. And it's such an old mentality. But the thing I tell people about that is like, it's not your parents' fault. It's not your grandparents' fault. It's not your great grandparents' fault. This is knowledge has been passed from generation to generation and accepted blindly, you know? And I think that's why living in the time that we do today, if you look at the history of the entire planet, you know, and depending on what religion you are and if you're a scientist or not, whatever, okay, it doesn't matter if it's been around for millions of years or tens of thousands, but if you think about like the timeline in human history, the fact that we live today in 2022 on the timeline, it's so unique because social media has changed everything and people have the ability to actually follow their bliss, you know, and the ideals of like, you have to go to school, get a job, go to college, work for someone, slave 40 years, is kind of starting to melt away, which is a good thing because there's not just one path to success, right? So I would say don't get hung up on that kind of, because I started that way and it led me to somewhere in there I'm not anymore, but you know, it wasn't for me and it's not for everybody, so.
I mean, that's going to lead me on to the next question that I wanted to ask you anyway, Gil. So, we mentioned earlier, like so many of us are just living life with this childhood programming that's been passed down from generation to generation. And it's not, say, parents' fault. It's not friends, family fault, because they've learned it from their family, from their parents, etc. And it just gets passed down. But until someone, say, interrupts that pattern and changes and says, actually, no, I'm not going to go down this path that you want me to go down. I'm going to go down this path instead. Everything will remain the same. So
Correct.
my next question to you then would be, what would you say, Gil, was say the main thing that you had to unlearn from your childhood programming?
Oof. I've I've been working on myself a lot, so I've had to unlearn a lot of things. But I would say the one thing is that we I don't believe that we understand how powerful beings that we really are. You know, I was born in a very Christian household, right? And you know, I again, my stance on religion today, I don't really get into it because everyone has their own, and I'm very unbiased, but I feel like even being raised in a Christian household and having those ideals given to you, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that says it's black or white, right? Like if you're this, then it's a sin. If you're this, then it's bad. And I had to really like unlearn a lot of that information, you know, because it's again, now I'm like the most accepting person ever. I don't care if you what religion you are, I don't care if you're gay, straight, I don't care you're political, I don't care about that. But when I was young, and then like I think also the direct result of living in America and being in this kind of thing and being taught so much about like and giving so many stereotypes about the world, I had to unlearn that. And that's why I love travel. Because when I started to travel, I started to see that a lot of what I taught was complete bullshit, right? I mean, people of different religions, people in different countries, people of different ideals, people of different. I started to see how much more we have as humans in common, and how a lot of like the information that was given had you know made me look through a lens very very small. And so you know travel has done that for me. I have become such a more of accepting person. I've pretty much dropped every prejudice I've ever had against anyone that I was taught at a young age. And I think, you know, like that's one of the biggest lessons you can learn in life is to really think for yourself. Regardless of what everyone around you is saying, parents, government, religion, to really, you know, be able to experience it for yourself and create your own opinions and your own ideals instead of just accepting blindly what's been given to you and seeing the world through such a small hole that it could potentially cause you to miss out on how incredible life can really be.
That's so, so powerful. And you mentioned about, say, learning whilst traveling the world. And I'm not talking about doing classes whilst going. I'm on about just learning what life has to offer and the different worlds out there. There's so many people living these lives that we know nothing about. And I personally learned the most from, say, solo backpacking around the world or going on trips off on my own than I've ever learned, say, in a school or in a classroom.
Yeah,
Um, so I just wanted to go back a notch, if it's okay, Gil, because you mentioned
absolutely.
about when you went on your trip to do the mission trip in
Correct.
Africa. So could you talk to us about that a little bit and just tell us maybe what you learned from that trip?
Oh my gosh. I mean, some of life's greatest lessons. Look, to put it in perspective, you know, you have to imagine that you worked your entire life. You thought you were successful. Everything in the world, including your significant other, has been taken from you, and it's the worst point of your life. You think, and then you leave the comfort of the United States and living in Southern California and all the luxuries that you completely take for granted. And I flew to Eastern Africa, and I went to Uganda, Burundi, and Kenya, and I ended up visiting the poorest country in the world per capita, which was called Burundi. And you know, we were able to raise money to bring to help build schools and a wing at a hospital. So I thought I was going over there to give them something, right? And just again, how you can have your paradox and the way you view the world completely change. Because even though I was losing everything in the United States I thought was important to me, all the materialistic stuff, when I actually was there on the ground and visited an orphanage, you know, in one of the poorest countries in the world, it really reset the way that I saw the world, because I immediately stopped feeling sorry for myself. I felt extremely humbled and realized that the fact that I had electricity and running water and purified water and Wi-Fi and, you know, like all the luxuries that we had in the US, that these poor children weren't even afforded, and they were orphans, you know. And there was, and so like there's only so high of a ceiling they can ever reach, because there's not even opportunity, right? So like their life has pretty much been predestined. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I realized how blessed I truly was. I realized that the way that I had seen, the way that I saw the world, that you know, everyone accepts as truth, was immediately washed away in this one day we visited an orphanage. And then I've seen the world completely different. And so like, that's why I encourage people to travel and travel internationally and go immerse themselves in other cultures, because you can't have that experience if you never leave the comfort of your own city, and you don't leave the comfort of your circle of influence, your friends, your family. It really takes getting out and you know, being somewhere completely different, and traveling can do that. And so like that was the greatest lesson that I learned, was like, you know, the world isn't the world is the way that it is, but everyone sees it in their own way, and it can be different. And you know, sometimes it takes an experience like that to make you really see how life truly is, and not the way that you are. And so that was like a big turning point in my life. And I knew after that, two things: I always wanted to be able to pay it forward and like help other people, because it was like the greatest feeling ever. And then secondarily, I you know, I knew I needed to do something in travel, because I couldn't have had that experience had I never left LA.
I mean, again, like, it's just so powerful what you said there, because so many of us are just living life through this, like, this lens, like you mentioned. Like, it's almost like we're viewing our own truth, or our own belief through our own set of, say, belief goggles or glasses or window or lens. And we believe that every single thing that we see is true.
Yeah.
But until you say step out of that jar, you don't actually know what's going on. Like, you can't read what's on the label from inside the jar. So you need to step outside of, say, that comfort zone or the current life that you're living, in order to see what you really have in life. And you mentioned, Gil, gratitude. And like, gratitude, again, for me, really helped me out of, say, when I was in a deep depression. Like,
Mhm.
gratitude, I believe, makes what you have enough. And true happiness isn't getting what you want, but it's wanting what you've already got. Because there's so many people that would absolutely love to trade places with you, even though how bad your life is. If you've got, say, running water, Wi-Fi, etc., you're living a life so much better than millions of people out there as well. So no,
Yeah.
that's super powerful. So that was my next question, actually, Gil, to you, which would be, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned from your most painful experience in life?
Yeah. That, you know, my most painful lesson was really that, you know, the world wasn't the way that I had saw it. It was the way that I had become. And that can cause you to be blind. And a lot of people, I mean, and you know, what's funny is I heard this information before, and sometimes it's like cliche, and you hear people talking about it, and it just like goes over your head, or you don't really give it a second to thought. You don't really allow it to, you know, impact you. But it is the truth. You know, the world is the way that you view it. And the way that you view it is a combination of all the things that you've been taught and the lens that you're looking at it through. And, you know, I think a lot of people, they wonder why they can't get to the next level, or they can't, you know, have success in their life, and they can't um, reach their goals and all that stuff. And it's and they fail to realize, they always think that it's some kind of outside influence that's causing it. You know, it's I don't get the right opportunities. Oh, I don't meet the right people. Oh, I don't live in the right place. Da, da, da. But really, oftentimes, it's yourself is the one that is causing that not to happen. You know, like everything starts with the power of self. And so you need to You know, if you believe honestly you're never going to get opportunities and no one out there's ever going to help you and then it's never going to happen, you know. And you really have to like take a look in the mirror and take responsibility for where you are, no matter if you're 5 years old or 80 years old, you're rich or poor. You're there as a result of your own decisions and your own belief pattern, you know. And it's really hard to accept because, you know, checking ego is one of the hardest things in this human experience you will ever have to do, and no one likes to do it, myself included, right? But the second that you own it and take responsibility for it and then really have a discipline to try to change it to get what you want, that's when you'll see the results. So that was hard for me because it was a huge blow to my ego, you know, and it was a huge blow to myself personally to have to realize that like I wasn't seeing the world the way it really was. I was seeing it through my own lens, you know. But I'm glad that that veil was taken off and I was able to actually see things for how they were, because it changed my life pattern and changed, you know, the history of the last 10 years for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to have that, say, paradigm shift, because I believe life is pure personal perception. Like your perception will literally shape your reality. But the good thing is, if you can change your thinking, you can literally change your life as well. So it's about having that awareness, because awareness gives you choices and choices give you freedom. So yeah, it's super important to just say, take a different approach or a different view to things, because how you think life is may not actually be right. This is just you in this moment. So if you change your thinking, like I said, you can change your life. So Gil, final question that I'd like to ask you then.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what you know now, what one piece of advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Yeah. You really need to take responsibility for yourself. And I really think that people should invest in themselves. And what I mean by invest in themselves is, you know, if you had something that happened traumatic as a child, you have childhood trauma with your parents, a friend, whatever, you know, see a psychologist, see someone to get rid of that pain. If you're if you're brought up in a certain way of thinking about like money and, you know, ideals and stuff like that, I say it's good to invest in yourself and read information that can potentially help you. You know, there's so much good reading material out there, and really the kind of material I'm talking about is the kind that helps you take back the power of your own mind, right? To really shape the way that you think. Because, and again, this is really hard for people that have never done this to accept, but we really do become a product to have the way that we see the world and the way that we think and the feelings that we put out. You know, every thought, they've proven every thought is a wave of energy, right? And the entire universe is made up of energy. And so if you dwell on the negative all the time, if you dwell on things that happen from the past, it can prevent you from having a good future. So it's really important to like take care of everything that happened to you in the past. It's oftentimes it's hard and it's painful, but those things can block you from having a good future. And then really working on the power of your own mind, really understanding, you know, and getting to a good practice of meditation and being grateful and really investing into yourself, because it's the best investment you can ever make. And when you understand that, like, if you're able to change that, you're able to change your future, then you'll invest more and more. And then, like, for me, it just becomes a daily practice of meditation. First thing I do before I wake up is I meditate. I get into you know, an attitude of gratitude and really try to set my day, because, you know, I think a lot of people, since they don't understand that, oftentimes you're in a deep sleep. You wake up to an abrupt alarm that's like a car horn or something that just takes you out of like your comfort zone, right? And then you reach over and you grab your phone, and then you're off into the whatever, the metaverse, whatever you want to call it. And the stuff that you see is like a bill's overdue, or, you know, your rent's due, or something bad happened, or the first thing you allow yourself to like really think about is negative, has the ability to shape your entire day, you know, and then it could just like domino. So it's really about taking back the power of your own mind and really owning it And for those, and you know, for everyone that I've ever given that advice, or any people that I ever know have done that, not one person has ever said, well, that was a waste, right? Like everyone realizes that it's truly the best investment they can have. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Gil, thank you so much for sharing that. And I believe it's so important. Like you said there about your alarm going off like a car horn, like it's. I don't actually wake up from alarms because they're so. It's so like this noise is it's just a noise that you don't really want to hear. And like there's so many say negative connotations attached with just an alarm. Like I have to go to work. Like if you don't like your job, I have to go to work. Rather than you get to go to work, you got to go to work. And then it automatically sets you up for a bad day. And like you say, it can say taint the rest of your day, but then it'll
The
also
domino effect.
yeah, domino effect. It'll trickle into your week. Next thing you know, you had a bad month, year, and it's just like you say, it's a domino effect. So yeah, super important to get that morning routine right in the first thing. But Gil, thank you so much for being here. And we got so many people that have come through the room today, and we've had a few comments as well, which has been great. So Gil, I know you've got your account here, which people can jump over and follow you on there. You've got Luxury World Traveller as well. So what is the best or the most easiest way that someone can say connect with you, reach out to you, yeah, and give you some feedback?
Yeah, I mean, they can obviously on my personal account, they can send me a DM. Probably be easier than if they go to the main account because, you know, we get about 50 to 60 DMs a day, so it's tough. And my team handles that. But yeah, send me a DM on my personal. I'm really usually pretty good about doing that. And you know, if anyone needs some good reading material, I have plenty. You know, plenty of places to start. And again, you know, you have to kind of work your way up. But I just really would encourage anyone that heard the message is still on to really invest in their own mind. That's very, very important, you know. And I as someone who's been blessed by it, like you really can't stress enough how important that is. So hopefully somebody out there heard that, and they'll start with some of these practices and attitudes of gratitudes, and it'll help to like shift their life. And if they ever want to reach out to me on DM, I'm more than happy to, you know, start a conversation with them.
Oh, Gil, thanks so much. And bonus question here, Gil, because I know you like reading. What's your favourite book, or what would you say to someone that really doesn't read? First book to go out there, pick up and start reading.
Oh. There's so many good books. Maybe The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is one of my,
Fantastic book. That changed my
yeah.
mindset when I was depressed.
Yeah, I mean, people fail to realize, you know, like they fail to realize that 99% of their life is spent worrying about the future, or mulling over stuff that happened in the past, and they don't understand how important the present moment really, really is, right? And if you continue to worry about what happens in future things and dwell on the past, you can never really shape your life because you're not present. And present is where all the magic happens, right? It happens now. It happens in the present moment. But too many people get stuck on really like not ever being present. And so I think The Power of Now is a good start, because you can understand that concept, then you can build a foundation to kind of move forward. So.
Yeah, fantastic choice there, Gil. And the only ever time that we ever really truly have is this moment right now. So yeah, fantastic book. So Gil, thanks so much. Thanks everybody for coming here today as well and tuning in. Guys, jump over, follow Gil and follow Luxury World Traveller as well if you haven't done so already. So Gil, thanks so much, and we'll catch up soon, my friend.
Great talking, my friend. Yeah, we'll see you in Clubhouse.
Yeah, thanks, Gil. Thank you. Bye bye.
Ciao.